Hey friends, Darren Bailey here today. Thank you for tuning in for another episode. I love doing these podcasts just to educate you, to inform you, and most importantly, to empower you. We got a lot of work to do to save Illinois, to save our nation, and everybody has a part to play in that. And you know what I stand for. I stand for standing up, saying your piece, making a difference, and then, most importantly, getting to work to create change. And I hope that through these video sessions, that I hope that some of this information clicks with someone, and you have interest in something that we're talking about. And I think you're going to have a lot of interest in where we're heading at today. So today we're with a good friend of mine. I've just developed an amazing relationship over the past several years with government. You'll find out a little bit later. Levi Slater is with us today. Levi Slater is a current police officer with the city of Effingham Police Force. He's a part owner with Accuracy Firearms in Effingham. But what we're going to talk about today is the fact that he's retired of 21 plus years with the Illinois National Guard. So, Levi, thank you so much for coming here today. Thank you so much for your service to our nation, your current service to protecting and serving the people, and your stance, obviously, for the Second Amendment, fighting and struggling with the business here in Illinois, and we've got a ton to talk about. But I'd love to here at Full Armor Christian Academy in Louisville. It's, I think, just about every year that we've had a graduating class come out, and there are 6 to 8 students. Sure. Just about every year we have a student who joins the armed forces or at least or joins the National Guard.
That's great.
And so. Things are tough out there today, and I see the opportunity to serve our country being a very viable option, something that you're going to be just blessed and honored with all of your life, and I'd like to kind of break that down today to talk about the National Guard, which just recently celebrated their 300th birthday. Tell us a little bit real quick about who Levi Slater is. Get to know the people.
Born and raised in Crawford County, and first off, thanks for having me here today. Anytime I get the chance to talk about, the National Guard or a little bit about my professional career, it's always great to share in those things. But born and raised in Crawford County, I came about the National Guard really kind of by accident. I'll be honest, I didn't know anything about the Guard. Hadn't really heard anything about the Guard. At the time, I was senior year of high school. Kind of like, hey, where do I go from here?
Where'd you attend high school at?
So I graduated from Oblong.
Yep.
High
Okay.
School,
All right.
And kind of didn't know where I was going. I knew I wanted to do law enforcement. Wasn't sure federal side, state side, more of a municipality. But my parents are like, hey, if you're going to do that, you may want to think about the military. No immediate family members in my family had served. I believe my maternal grandfather had served in the Navy. But other than that, it was kind of something that was new to me. So I researched everything and still didn't know anything about the Guard. So I originally thought, hey, the Coast Guard looks nice. I'd been to Panama City, Florida, and saw them out on their wave runners and Coast Guard. I'm like, hey, that looks like something I can get behind. Come to find out, I couldn't get a Coast Guard recruiter to call me back. And then one day I see this commercial for the Illinois National Guard. And I'm like, I don't know what it's about, but hey, I'll try to find out. So I made a phone call, got a National Guard career counselor that came to my house by the name of Jonathan Horsley, who he may still be serving or getting ready to retire. And so I started learning about what this crazy thing was called the Illinois National Guard. And it turned out to be a great fit for me. Turned out to be a great career for me, something that I fell in love with and served for over 21 years, 5 months worth of service. So the Guard's kind of different. It has, you have both a state mission and a federal mission. So on the state side, we help in any kind of natural disasters. I think I wrote down some notes here. The Great Flood of '93. That was a state activation. Most recently in 2011, we had the horrible winter storm that came through. So the governor in times of need can activate his National Guard or these soldiers to assist with anything here inside of the state. The 2012 NATO summit in Chicago, we activated about 1,400 soldiers, National Guard soldiers for that. So they come in different walks, different varieties. They are part of the Army. So a traditional Guard soldier works 1 weekend a month. It's a typical drill. Sometimes it's a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Sometimes it's just a Saturday, Sunday. But sometime during that calendar month, you're going to do what's called a drill period. They are part of the Army. So, if you look at their uniform, it says U.S. Army. They do attend active duty Army basic training.
So they are at the call of the governor for statewide enlistment and help.
Correct.
But they're always there. The allegiance lies to the the U.S. Army.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
You can always be activated by the President of the United States also. So they have this unique role. They have this state role where they're going to help with natural disasters, things that occur in the state. And then they have their federal role, which has been a huge role, obviously, since 9/11. I just wrote down, just to go back kind of historically, the National Guard has participated, the Illinois Guard specifically has participated in the American Revolution, the War of 1812, the Black Hawk War, where we have our most famous Illinois Guardsman, who was Abraham Lincoln, the Mexican War, Civil War, Spanish-American War, World War I, World War II, Korean War, Vietnam, Desert Storm, War on Terror. So literally, your soldiers here, the Illinois Guard, has participated in every,
Wow.
I mean, pretty well every engagement that are taught in our history books here at our schools. So a lot of history there.
Wow. What's the biggest difference between joining the Army and joining the National Guard? If a young person's out there trying to figure out, interested in this, why did you choose the Guard instead of the Army? Break that down just a little bit.
So a typical, active duty Army soldier, you're going to graduate from high school. You're going to go to basic training. Then you're going to go to what's called AIT, which is Advanced Individual Training. That's where you're going to learn your job in the Army. And then from there, you're serving anywhere from 4 to 6 years in the Army at various locations throughout the world. With a traditional Guard soldier, you're going to graduate from high school. You're going to go to basic training at some of the exact same places that the active duty soldiers go to. Then you're going to go to what's called Advanced Individual Training, same as the active duty soldiers. And upon graduation of that, you're going to come home and work in some of your communities here. Effingham's got a National Guard armory. Carbondale, Murfreesboro. I think at one time, I believe there was one National Guard armory for like every 3 counties in the state of Illinois. So
that.
Paris, Illinois had one, Lawrenceville, Illinois. So generally you could, kind of throw a dart at the map of Illinois, and somewhere in that vicinity or somewhat close would be a National Guard armory that you could go and then fulfill your training working in that job skill that you chose. So they go on to college. They have what's called the Illinois National Guard grant. So if you're a serving member in the Illinois National Guard, the state helps to cover your tuition to any state-supported school. So if you're going to go on to college to Lakeland or a junior college or even a university, you can use the Illinois National Guard grant. That will help pay for your college tuition for your service to your country and community here in the state of Illinois. So there's lots of benefits. Free college, it's a great benefit. It's not really free. You're earning it by going to basic training, going to AIT, possibly being activated to go fight in one of these engagements that our country maybe is involved in at the time. But very unique. And one thing that I think really sets the Guard apart from other branches of service is just that simple aspect of coming back home. So, you take an 18-year-old kid who graduates high school, goes off to the Army, and for the next 6 years, that's what he does. Really, his wheelhouse is pretty narrow. It's, that professional career is within the scope of what the Army has taught him.
Yeah.
You take a Guard soldier during that same period, they come home, they go to college, maybe they start a business, these other skill sets. So now they're branching out, and maybe they're an electrician on the side. So Monday through Friday, they work as an electrician. Saturday and Sunday, they're an infantry soldier serving in the 130 in Effingham, Illinois. Where that really came into play was during the War on Terror. So the Guard kind of had a bad reputation for a while because we hadn't really been utilized for a long period of time. I mean, you go back, I think, as even small during the Desert Storm period. But obviously, with the War on Terror, 2 wars going on, the Army relied heavily on National Guard units, throughout the United States to help support and supplement their role in the war. And I know specifically the 130, which is an infantry unit here in Illinois, they had some really good success in Iraq, and it was simply having those other skill sets. Villagers were upset because the electricity wasn't running, right? Well,
Wow.
the active army
Now,
didn't
that's
have
awesome.
anybody that knew how to fix the electric.
I had not heard that.
But yet you had 3 or 4 guys that were electricians, union electricians back home, and they're like, well, hey, this is what we need to help fix this. So it brings just not just the war fight, but it brings, doctors, lawyers, dentists.
Wow.
There's certain skill sets that these guys pick up in the civilian world that now they can use to implement. And it's nothing against the other branches of service, but if that's only what you know, it's only
Right.
what you know. So it was huge and very beneficial, I think, in the War on Terror, having these National Guard units come in, because, again, they have the Army skill set, but then they also have these other skill sets that they've acquired throughout their life, owning businesses or just those types of humanitarian things that may come into. There was a lot of cops that deployed to Iraq. Well, there was, you'd gather these bad guys and then, well, there's no MPs. Well, good thing is this guy was a cop back home and kind of knew a little bit of interrogation and those types of things.
Wow.
So it's a unique service, but I enjoyed it. 21 years and was able to retire. And so it's been a pretty good career for me.
Were you a police officer most of the time that you were serving in the Guard?
So, I went to basic training, AIT, infantry school, came home and started into college at Lincoln Trail College. And then 9/11 happened. So that kind of really adjusted things, really kind of put things in perspective for me. That's, was something that I had never thought would happen in our country. And I can remember where I was when my parents called me and said, hey, have you seen the news? And I'm like, no. He said, well, we've been attacked. And I went home and watched this. And I remember my dad saying, well, our country's probably going to go to war. So what happened is,
How old were you at the time?
let's see, I'd have been...
You were in junior college still, right out of high school?
Yeah,
Okay, all right. 20-ish, 18, 19.
So, yeah,
okay.
19 years
All right.
old. And so the Army sent a lot of our European forces into Afghanistan. That was when we kicked off the war. So we actually, the 130, the National Guard infantry battalion here, 2 of the 130 is what they're referred to. We backfilled a lot of those Army units in Europe and then took on as a security force. So I deployed from January of 2002 to Germany, a little place called Miesau, Germany. And we were part of the security forces to help guard all of our bases there in Germany. So I did about 8 or 9 months there. Came back to the United States, back into college. And then I had a guy by the name of Jason Wolf, as a retired sergeant major. Jason Wolf. With the
Jason's
NRA.
awesome.
Yeah. So Jason Wolf was a recruiter at the time, and he approached me and he said, hey, you got this gift of gab. You kind of talk to people. Have you ever thought about being a recruiter? And I'm like, no, I've never really gave it a thought. And he's like, come to work for me for a while, and we'll see how it goes. So I went to work for that time Sergeant First Class Jason Wolf. And I did. I had a gift of being able to talk to people and really just share the story of the Guard and my, story and the benefits of it. And when you really, look at it and weigh it, it was a good fit for me. So I became a recruiter for the Guard. Did that for several years, all the way up until about 2010. Actually volunteered for a deployment to Afghanistan. So we had a deployment. You could volunteer to go with other states.
Now back up to that. During the time that time frame that you were working as a recruiter, were you working full time?
Full time.
So there you are. You're still in the Guard, But so there are some full-time positions.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
wanted to clarify
No, no,
that
yeah.
to make sure
It's good.
that people understand the options.
Sure.
Okay, then back to the
Yeah, so
going
there
into
are
Iraq.
full-time people in the Guard. So
Okay.
the Guard just can't run itself
Yes.
on 28 days. So
Yep.
you have at each of these National Guard armories, you generally have, anywhere between 3 to 5, depending if it's a battalion headquarters, or you may have more than that. But those guys are what we call AGR, Active Guard Reserve. So
Okay.
they're active duty soldiers working on behalf of the National Guard. So they're running things on the day-to-day operation, making sure that the training's ready to go when the guys come in on their weekend, pay, just anything that associated with running that as a full-time kind of unit. So that's what I did full-time for the Guard, was recruiting and retention. And I did that all the way up till 2010, where I volunteered for a deployment with a task force called ODIN, ODIN, Observe, Detect, Identify, and Neutralize. It was an intelligence unit that the active duty had kind of stood up, but it was interesting. Here, the active duty Army was standing up this intelligence unit, but the active duty Army didn't have any pilots, fixed wing pilots, to fly airplanes. Because years ago, the way I understand it, somebody can correct me on here if I'm wrong, but when the U.S. Army Air Corps separated and became the Air Force, so they separated from the Army Air Corps, I believe Congress said, okay, Air Force, you get airplanes, and Army, you can have helicopters.
Yep. Wow. Okay.
But you can't have airplanes, Army. Well, there was one of those gray areas, which was this special operations community could kind of do this. The Army said, listen, there's a need for this. This is how we're going to do it. But they needed C-12 pilots. Well, it just happens that most of your states, your National Guard state, has a C-12 because that's how they fly the generals around.
Okay.
So they said, hey, we'll just grab these National Guard guys and we'll piece together this platform to make it work. And that's what they did. So I volunteered for Odin and spent a year between Kandahar and Bagram running intelligence missions on an aircraft out of there for a year. So with
Wow.
Jason Wolf
Okay.
as my first sergeant.
Wow.
there. So yeah.
Wow.
And then came home, back to recruiting and retention, and then retired out with a little over 20 years active duty. November, I believe, of 21 was my
Okay.
retirement. So,
Sergeant first class.
yeah.
Wow. That is awesome.
So-
So you mentioned a couple of times, and I've seen this before. So Effingham is the 130 infantry.
130th Infantry.
So some National Guards, transportation, artillery. So how does your location where you live somewhat determine where your specialty is going to be? How does that work?
It could be if you decide that you want to live close to home. If you're in the Effingham area, Sullivan, Illinois, there's a National Guard unit there. It's what we call the 634th. It's a support style unit. So you have truck drivers, you have cooks, you have, water purification. You have just an abundance of support type elements to go forward, medical, those types of things. So if you lived in Effingham and you wanted to do medical stuff, you absolutely could be in the Sullivan unit.
Okay.
You don't have to stick with just what's...
You just may travel a little bit
just
longer
may travel
for your...
a little bit.
Okay.
Yep. So we have... I know of guys that would drive to Chicago.
Thank you. I did not know that.
Oh,
Okay.
there's,
So whatever, you're not limited by your location, by what you desire to do.
No.
All right.
Absolutely.
Wow.
You could travel the state, go from one end to the other end, change your job. If there's another job that you hey, that looks fun, I think I want to do that. They always call it reclassing. So as long as there's a vacancy, there's a need for you to fill that, then you could reclassify, go learn how to do that skill set, and just really kind of build your resume.
Wow.
It's a great opportunity. And when you're talking about serving your country, getting paid to serve your country, getting the benefits of, education, college education, some money whenever you're going. And I don't want to speak specifically on what the money is now, but you do get part of the GI Bill. So in addition to your college being paid for, you're going to be able to pick up some extra money on your drill weekend that they give you for going to college.
Yeah.
So it's a great opportunity to serve your country, serve your community. and really kind of figure out who you are, where you want to go, and what's
Yep.
important to you. And
I love what you mentioned earlier about being able to use the experience.
absolutely.
I'm a kind of a Civil War buff, and I see, during the Civil War, people sometimes in midlife were drawn in, and their same kind of thing. Their expertise became very valuable. What sometimes just maybe they were a school teacher, whatever they were doing, did hold some value and some weight, and I never considered that. So
From a little old kid in Crawford County who had really no, I didn't know where I was going as far as the military. Fast forward 2 years when I was in Germany after 9/11, and was able to travel all over Europe. I was able to drink champagne on top of the Eiffel Tower at 20 years old.
my.
And I tell people all the time, it's the experience to get to be able to see what is
Yeah.
out there.
Yeah.
To be able to go to Rome and see the Vatican
Wow.
and essentially an all expenses paid tour.
Wow.
I mean, I was
Yeah.
making,
Yeah, you're serving.
I'm serving, and at the
Absolutely.
same time, getting paid to be there and travel
Yeah.
and see some of those, and just a great
No,
experience.
that is
really.
awesome. One weekend a month. Tell us what that weekend looks like.
It depends. So every year, the Department of the Army, they're going to put out, the Department of Defense is going to put out their threat matrix of this is where we see threats to the United States. These are the things that we have to train on. And the active duty is going to train on those types of things. And the National Guard are going to train on those same skill sets. So it really varies. Sometimes you'll see more, for a long time we did a lot of mount stuff where the urban fighting. Obviously, when you really kind of look at the threat matrix, we're talking China, we're talking Russia. That's a different style of warfare. So you're seeing them going back to doing some of these larger maneuvers, in open areas and wooded areas.
So when we see these convoys of trucks sometimes headed down the road, and you're assuming it's National Guard, they're probably heading to a training
could be
ground somewhere.
headed to a training area somewhere.
What is the mix of classroom at Effingham versus that style? Is it?
It really depends. At least once a year, you're going to have a weekend that it's just nothing but administrative stuff. It's doing the paperwork, doing the medical stuff, the physical, just keeping in line, keeping all of your insurance, those types of things. Call them, an admin weekend. But generally, whatever your job is, that's kind of what you're going to train on. It doesn't necessarily mean that you may go out and do something. You may do some classroom instruction. You may go to a range and shoot some of your firearms, become proficient in those. They're doing a lot of different training when I was leaving, really trying to incorporate some of it, bringing in some civilian stuff and saying, okay, hey, this is how we do it in case we ever have to work with them at, some type of large scale incident also. So training is what you make of it. Sometimes you're doing the old pew pew, and sometimes you get real rounds to shoot, or, but typically, a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you come in.
Friday morning, Friday evening. When does it start? When does it end? Typically?
Really just depends on the training day.
Okay.
So, if you're taking an early out on Saturday, maybe you're going to go down to Fort Campbell, Kentucky and train there or somewhere like that. They may be leaving early Saturday, so they'll bring you in on Friday night, 6:00, and you're going to maybe get on a bus. Maybe you go that night. Maybe you get up early the next morning and head out, go somewhere and train all weekend, Saturday, Sunday, come back. Usually Sunday you can expect to be done with drills sometime between, I would say, 5 and 6 p.m. Allows you a little time for some of those guys that do travel to travel home. But it really, no weekend's the same. So, where you may be doing a lot of classroom one weekend, the next weekend you may be outside, spending all of your time outside, camping outside, doing those types of things. So,
Okay.
can really vary just depending on what your job is.
Yeah. All right. You retired Sergeant First Class. How's rank established in the National Guard?
So it's same way. So everybody comes in. You have the enlisted side. So that's your privates, your specialists, your sergeants, all the way up through sergeant major, and then you have your officer side. So those that have a college degree.
A college degree is required
Yep.
for the officer. So if you are in schooling during the time, you're probably not eligible for an to be an officer until you receive a diploma?
So you can receive you can commission prior to receiving that bachelor's degree. You have to have so many college credits, and I can't remember exactly how many it is. As long as you finish that degree, I think by the time you hit captain, or it was whenever I left. So come in as a lieutenant, you got the college credits, you're working towards that bachelor's. You could actually commission earlier. So your lieutenant, captain, majors, colonels, all the way up to general.
Okay.
It's your officer side of the house.
Does ROTC play a part
It does.
in all this?
Yeah, actually, the Illinois Guard really partners with the ROTC. I think when I left, at least every university that had an ROTC had a National Guard career counselor that was working there with the ROTC. So they were teaching those military science courses. So yeah, we partner. The ROTC program is a great asset for the Illinois Guard because we get to pull in these brand new officers, and then they get a lot of experience along the way. Even if maybe later on they have the desire to go active duty, they're still getting a lot of leadership time during that process. So it's a great partnership between the Illinois Guard and a lot of our ROTCs.
Okay, who's a candidate right now to join the National Guard? Someone's listening out there. What age? Who is the candidate?
So candidates would be anybody junior in high school, all the way up to I'm probably gonna screw it up, but we'll say 38.
Okay.
So in that somewhere in that ballpark, generally your targeted group is your high school juniors.
Yes.
So they have what's called the split option. So if I'm a high school junior, just getting ready, here probably in the next week or something to finish up that junior year, I can go to basic training this summer.
Okay.
So I take off. That's going to be my summer job, essentially, is U.S. Army basic training. You're going to get in the best shape of your life.
Are you paid for that, or they just take? Okay,
yeah,
so they're
absolutely.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay, I didn't know if that just they gave you room and
Nope.
board and food and
You're going to go through a basic U.S. Army, just the
Okay.
same as an active duty person, basic training. You're going to get done with basic training. You're going to come back and start your senior year of high school. Throughout your senior year, you're going to drill 1 weekend a month. Now, they will work with you. Let's say you're a high school, you're playing football. They work with you on those drill weekends as far as, okay, do you have a football game? Do you have practice? Those types of things. So they're going to work with you through your senior year, doing those 1 weekend a month. When you graduate, you're going to go off to your AIT. Again, that's where you're going to learn your skill set. And upon graduation from that, you're going to come home, start into college, and go to college under the Illinois National Guard grant. So they're going to pick up your college tuition if you go to one of our state universities.
okay.
And basically start building your resume and your future
right.
and see
All
where
right.
it leads you.
Or you can go straight to work if you choose not to go to
absolutely.
college.
Yep.
So you have
Come back, go straight
amazing
to work.
options.
I never did finish my bachelor's.
Okay.
Got into the guard thing and the recruiting, and I just never had the drive. I do now that I have daughters in college.
We all learn the same way. You would,
Yeah.
yeah. If I could do high school all over again, I'd probably be a straight A student. But back then, I just got by with the minimum.
I would agree
just
with
like,
you.
oh,
My teachers
and trying to instill that in
teachers
our
are
young
probably listening. They're probably thinking the same thing.
I know,
but
that's awesome.
no, everybody. I never planned on owning a business, but
Yeah.
here I am now later in life with 3 or 4 different LLCs. So
Wow.
it's one of those things that you never know where you'll end up. I didn't have a plan on it, ending in the Guard, but the career and the opportunity and the places that I was able to see and travel and do and the friends that I've made,
That's
just
amazing.
tremendous. I mean, there's somebody you haven't talked to in 8-10 years, and all at once they ring and it's like you start back up. It's like
Wow.
you never lost because
Wow.
there's that bond there. So
All right.
Yeah.
Someone's sitting out there and they're like, wow, what do? They Google Illinois National Guard? Do they go visit a recruiter? What's the best? What's the first step someone should take?
I would say that Google the Illinois National Guard. They have Facebook pages. I know that specifically the Illinois Guard has a Illinois National Guard recruiting and retention Facebook page. Whenever I was there, at least somebody monitored that. So you can get on there and say, hey, I'm interested in joining. What's it take? They'll look at where you're from and get you plugged in with the nearest recruiter, or go to the nearest armory close to you. Somebody
Stop
there's
by
always
and
a man
step in
step
and-
in
okay.
and see what it
Introduce
takes
yourself.
to
All right.
yeah, serve your
All right.
country and your community and
Well, awesome.
go from there.
Anything that we didn't cover?
No,
This has been, thank you. Thank you. God bless you for your service to our state,
Thank
our
you, Darren. I
country,
appreciate that.
our community. You're an amazing man, and I just have a lot of respect for you. So thank you.
Darren, I appreciate
It's
it.
been an
Thanks for
honor.
having me down. I love the studio here.
Thank you.
This is nice. Very good.
Friends, as usual, thank you so much. Share these messages. Just thank you for tuning in. We got work to do as Illinoisans, as Americans, and there's a place for every one of us. Whether it's local government, whether it's school board, whether it's a precinct committee person, a township trustee, whether it's signing up and serving in our armed forces or the National Guard. So, as usual, if you've got questions, comments, send them to me, Darren at baileyforillinois.com, DAOL. My name's right on the background there, so I don't even have to spell it anymore. I didn't even see that in the sign. Darren at baileyforillinois.com. Send us if there's information, if you've got questions from some of the wonderful people that come on these shows. Thank you for your time. Thank you for tuning in. And until next time, God bless you, and thank you so much.